Welcome to another episode of All Things Authentic. We are grateful and excited as always that you're joining us. We are wrapping up this remixed season of All Things Authentic, but we'll be so excited for what else there is to come. And so this week we are discussing therapy.
Yes.
But answering the question of, can therapy be replaced? And so this has come up because, there's a lot going on like social media and things. And so we see so much about like replacements of therapy or like things that people can do instead of therapy. And there's good reasoning behind it, but I think it's worth the discussion of like, genuinely, can therapy actually be replaced with some of these other things? So the first thing, there was something that maybe sparked your interest on Instagram.
Yeah, I just saw this cute video and it was of a girl who was luxuriating on vacation. And the caption was, "I wish travel therapy was covered by my insurance." Mm-hmm. And it just made me think about sometimes we call things like things that we do that feel good to us. We sometimes like call it therapy.
Yeah.
Like retail therapy, I think you had mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
This is travel therapy, like all these different terms or things that we may do that feel really good to us. Sometimes we attach the idea of therapy to it.
Yeah. And I never heard of travel therapy. Like I've heard that it's self-care, obviously relaxing and stuff, but I haven't heard how she was using it also like travel therapy. Especially having the insurance. that would be something. Nice, right? So, yeah, I think it'll be important with this conversation will really be deciphering between like therapy and things that are therapeutic for us, because there's like a vast difference. And so, yeah, some things I was trying to think, and I think there's more, but this is what I came up with when I think about things that are like therapeutic, but some people actually say it's like therapy for them. So, okay, the travel therapy. Yeah, you mentioned retail therapy. I think any like self-care activities, people say that's like their therapy. If it's just going to get a massage or something like that, it's like therapy for them. Talking to friends and family. So the relational component gets a little tricky because you are like actually talking to someone. So it can be like therapy-esque, but I think that's maybe something we'll have to dive into when we get into the psychology of like what are actually the benefits or some of the cons of saying that friends and family can be like your therapist for you. Maybe working with like a life coach. I know before you had mentioned getting support from a pastor. That's probably another one we can discuss more because that can be like therapy. There are some pastors who engage in like pastoring of the church and also therapy. But sometimes it gets a little convoluted also. So still a little different from going to like a trained therapist. And then another one I thought of, I put AI because...
Girl, what? I want to hear this.
Okay, well, one, with this AI world kind of taking off, there has been like slight discussions on like, will AI take
over
jobs
the therapist
and
job?
Even like therapy. And then you're kind of like, well, how? Because you need like a human interaction. But then not too long ago, I'm listening to the radio. And there's this guy who's, he was just discussing like not wanting to talk to his partner or wife, I don't know which one, as much anymore because they're still like busy, so he doesn't want to burden her. And so he has started talking to this, like, I think it's like an app or something. I don't even know the name of it or what it is. I didn't even know it existed. But he's pretty much talking to the thing as if it's a therapist or kind of like a friend too, but it's not a real person. It's like AI generated. I don't know what this is on, what it is. It was really helpful for him. He was like, he was happy about it. Like it feels so much better to be able to discuss some of these things and not like burden someone. So yeah, I'm like, what is this?
Yeah.
Now? So
So another thought that I had is like, as you were describing that it feels good to him because he doesn't have to maybe burden his wife, or maybe if she's busy or he feels uncomfortable sharing with him. It made me think about, well, maybe it's sort of just like a different form of writing in a journal, or maybe talking to yourself, or if, kids have imaginary friends, like a different form of getting something out in the air and in the open without necessarily getting that human interaction.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like it's like another tool to express yourself.
I think the thing writes back.
But it's not a human.
Yeah, it's just not a human.
Yeah. But I think maybe that's the elevated piece to it, is that it does give something back. So as opposed to like, oh, some people may talk to their dog and like, that may be really comforting. Or maybe they might write a letter or something, and that may feel good and it's expressive. I think there may be another component that you're getting feedback, which can also be helpful.
Yeah.
And I presume that maybe what it's saying, because, AI is intelligent, so it's pulling stuff from the internet about maybe what like a good response would be.
Yeah.
But it is not a friend. Unless we change the definition maybe of a friend, or maybe a friend doesn't need to be a human. I'm not sure. So that's going into some other philosophical stuff.
Yeah.
But I guess I think my initial second thought was more seeing it in that realm, but like an elevated version of expressing yourself to like an object or a thing.
Yeah. And it's not a therapist, AI.
And it is not. So. No, I would see that all the things that you talked about maybe are therapeutic.
Yeah.
But they're not therapy.
Yeah. And you mentioned talking to a dog. I think animals, pets are very therapeutic for people, but yeah, not therapy. And I think, so we'll get into some of these differences. But I think the biggest piece with therapy, and maybe the biggest misperception about it, is you're literally just sitting there talking to someone, which like, in essence, yeah, we are talking, but there's a lot more going on than just talking for most people. I mean, we can't talk for all therapists, but it's a little more like layered and loaded than just like sitting there talking. And I think that's why people think like, I can just talk to my friends or family. I'm going to get the same type of conversation, where at least in the work I do, I'm hoping that it's not the same. Like I tell people, like, I don't want this to be that similar to like a friend conversation, because a friend's most likely just going to tell you what you want to hear. Like there's some differences here. Like I'm not going to do that.
Or you might have a friend that tells you.
Yeah.
If they tell you what you don't want to hear, it may not be said in a way that you can receive.
So I guess a question then, for you, maybe some things on this list resonate with you, but if you had to answer like, what's therapeutic for you, what would you say?
I think I would say probably many of the things that are on the list feel therapeutic, like they can help me feel better, or can contribute to my ongoing well-being. So, I don't necessarily talk to a pastor, but I think just spirituality per se is helpful. Talking to friends, like probably at maybe the top of the list as something that I think is therapeutic for me, and something I can, I definitely think I rely on being able to get that out to another person that's a friend. What about you?
Well, you like nature too, and it's like
I love nature. Yeah. I really, I love nature. Side note, but it's like related. I haven't been able to walk recently, and so I've been feeling it, girl. Like, oh my God, I gotta get out. I gotta get a walk. And so finally, I got to walk this morning. And once I'm in it, like I started to feel a boost to my mood, and it was a difference between the days that I wasn't walking, and I just have more energy, and I feel like I get to be I'm actually more focused and productive.
Yeah. And it's nice you mentioned that, and maybe this ties more into the psychology piece, but more so my opinion and thoughts. I guess it's not completely a fact, but I think that can differentiate the two a lot, of like therapy versus therapeutic. Like a lot of things that we view that are therapeutic, we name it that because it makes us feel really good, right? Like this walking makes you feel good. If you don't do it, you don't feel as good. Now, therapy, on the other hand, in essence, most times than not, it makes you feel good. It's nice that you're going to talk. there's a lot of times though you're going to leave therapy and you don't necessarily feel good, but that's part of the process in healing. So eventually you will feel good. But maybe that can help people like really decipher between the two of like, yeah, these are my feel good things. Therapy, I'm going to feel good, but I'm also going to do a lot of work. It's going to be painful. I'm not always feeling good.
Yeah.
Right, so
what are your go-to therapeutic activities?
So yeah, some of mine are the same. I think, well, of course, travel. I've never said it's, have I said it? I don't know if I've ever tied it to like being therapeutic, but I guess in this context, if it like feels good, it is. But I just think it's like it's separate thing, right? Vacation, relaxation. But I don't know if anything that's like therapeutic for me, but it does feel good. Maybe retail therapy a little, but I'm not like a huge shopper. Like I like to shop, but I'm not like a huge shopper. So I'm not that type to go like overspend because it's like retail therapy for me. But sometimes, right? Target's therapeutic at times. So yeah, talking to maybe friends. And then I think maybe some of the self-care activities, but more so my like maintenance type things, right?
Like what?
So
what? I don't know. We want to know.
So like getting nails done, I was getting my nails done, lashes, so things like that. Just small little things. I'm not overdoing it. But it's like maintenance. But that's interesting to think about because it does feel good in the moment. You know, it's just like things I do where it's like my time, I can go do it. But at the same time, because it is like maintenance, I don't have to do it, but I'm just used to like my nails are starting to grow. I got to get my nails done. Let me get my eyebrows waxed. But sometimes that maintenance can be like obligation and work too, where it's like, dang, it's been 3 weeks already. Like, okay, let me go set up an appointment. But it takes time to like go and stuff. So sometimes it feels more of like on my to-do list, but I think the process of it,
so it feels good to you, like
good.
Yeah.
And I like massages too when I can go get them. So that feels good. So those are some of mine. Okay, next question, real fast, and to get your thoughts on how do we decipher between the two. So the things you've named that are therapeutic for you, what makes them different from like your own experiences of therapy? All right, if it's either going to therapy personally yourself or from the therapist perspective, but what would you say makes them pretty different?
Well, I think you already, or maybe I think you said it a little bit. It's like the idea of like having a trained professional who is sitting across from you and is really an opportunity. I'm talking about therapy to dig deeper than you might typically dig, to really understand, identify, sit with difficult emotions oftentimes, but it can be all kinds of emotions, to make connections between things that are happening, maybe barriers in your life, and make connections to patterns across time with family. And I think the other piece, and to make some like life changes sometimes people don't. And I lost the last piece that I was going to say, so I'm going to just like kind of close it there. Like that's what I think about on a general tip about what therapy is. And I think there's all kinds of different therapy forms, so I'm not going to go into all of the details, but that's generally what I see as therapy. But also just like the therapist who you're working with is trained in a way that they can listen for things that may not be apparent, and not just listen, but they're multiple modes of sensation. So they're seeing and they're hearing, they're visualizing, and making observations. And so a lot of communication is not necessarily verbal, which I think also differentiates AI, because AI, as of yet, is not necessarily like looking at your disposition or how you change or your affect. Like they're just reading what you type, not even listening to your tone. And so I think a therapist can pick up on all of those things and how that's different from the things that I enjoy. Well, I mean, I have the privilege of a lot of my friends are therapists. So sometimes I feel like they might be therapizing me or like I get a little therapization. But again, like that's not their explicit goal. Like their explicit goal is not to kind of work with me in a professional setting, and also not to alleviate symptoms. When I think about psychotherapy and therapy, a big piece of this is also usually, or a lot of times, not every time, symptom reduction. So I'm experiencing these set of symptoms or this disorder. The whole goal is really to not have you experience that, or to not have it affect your life in a way that it is, so not impairing you anymore. When I'm talking to a friend, like all of those clinical terms and things like that are not necessarily there or apparent. And they may say things to me in a way that a therapist would not, or wouldn't say at all, or wouldn't say to me in that particular way. And they also have insight, I think, to my life in a different way than a therapist would, because I'm going on vacations with my friends. They're seeing me a lot more than I'm seeing my therapist. They're seeing me at home. They're seeing me at their house. They're seeing me in all kinds of places. What else would you say in terms of, like, what would you add to that, or say differently?
Yeah, I like all that. I think one thing I think of is the expectations. And then my first thought kind of ties into what I was saying about it's not always about like feeling good. And I can remember some of my experiences, like going to therapy, and it was interesting to partake in that. All therapists should hopefully do some therapy too, because it's interesting to get the insight of like the other side of the couch. And so I know sometimes preparing for my sessions, I'd be like anxious and stuff, which I was kind of like, why, like you do this, why are you anxious? Like they know you're a therapist, it's no pressure, but it was still like feelings of anxiety. And sometimes that avoidance of like, okay, this is what I probably should talk about, but I don't know if I want to do all that today, which sometimes our clients think that, and we're pushing them up like, no, let's not avoid today. But I'm like, I'd be doing the same thing. So I think one big thing that's different is all of these therapeutic things that feel good. I'm leading and going into it like excited or happy, unless it's like a time crunch. But for the most part, it's like I don't have anxiety going into any of these things. We're going into a therapy room. It is like some heightened feelings and emotions of like anxiety. What's going to come up for me? And like I said before, you don't always feel good leaving. So that's one thing that stands out to me. And then, the expectations. And you mentioned like insight too. There is this level of insight that you hope to gain. And I tie that to like this expectation. It's not that you need to have super high expectations of therapy or of your therapist. Some people do. But there is an expectation that like we are in this space together. You hopefully as a therapist know what you're doing. You're trained to do this. I have some expectation that I'm going to get something a little different in here than I could if I'm just like talking to a friend, right? And maybe that's more of my biases of that expectation, because as therapists, we know like it should be a little more than talking to friends. So maybe I have this higher expectation, but I think the expectation piece stands out to me too, because I mean, with a lot of these things, I mean, I guess maybe I do have some expectation. I want my nails to look a certain way. If I'm going on vacation, I have some expectations. But the expectation's a little different, right? I think with therapy, there is this expectation of like, I might feel bad after, but I also want that to come with some like insight for me, or at least something for me to like reflect on. About.
I mean, you made a good point, I think, outside of maybe some of the other professions that people might seek support in, like coaching or maybe a pastor. These other things, I think, almost certainly you're not going to go do them if they don't feel good. Like, I'm not going to go pay for a vacation if I don't think I'm going to like enjoy it. I'm not going to go pay for my nails if I don't think I'm going to like them. I'm not going to go buy some clothes if I don't think the outcome and the process is going to be like pleasant.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks for tapping in to All Things Authentic. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. For full episodes, find All Things Authentic on your favorite podcast listening platform.